Orlando Arcia did a fine job for the Atlanta Braves last year and is on a very team-friendly contract. But what if he's not that guy? And what if he takes a step back? What are the backup plans at shortstop for the Atlanta Braves? And who is the shortstop of the future if it's not Orlando Arcia? I'll answer that question and many more on today's Mailbag episode of Locked On Braves. So let's get into it.
You are Locked On Braves, your daily Atlanta Braves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, and welcome back to Locked On Braves, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, where we cover your favorite Atlanta sports teams each and every day. I am your host, Jake Mastriani. You can follow me on social media at Shortstop Ball. Also, make sure you check out my written work over at bravestoday.com. Got an article up over there highlighting all the available pitchers still remaining that the Atlanta Braves could be targeting. You want to go give that a read. Got a question about that in today's episode as well. Make sure you follow the podcast on social media at LockedOn_Braves. Send in any questions, comments, feedback you have for the podcast. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube if you're new. Up over 8,200 subscribers there, making a push for 9K. Would love to get to 10K by opening day. That is certainly the goal. But thank you so much for the support there. Hit the thumbs up button as it does help share the podcast with others out there. Make sure that you're subscribed wherever you get your podcast to. If you're listening on the audio version, I thank you so much for your support as well. Do a lot of these live there in the off season. We already got a ton of people in here. We got Floyd, Monty 2K, Nick C, Frankie, Lex, Gregory, Chris Hester, Corey Carter, Lone Wolf in here, George Guerrero, MM, Leland, Wild One, Nick C, Jeffrey Humphreys, Truce, Wendell, Trey Alexander. Thank you so much for joining here live. Appreciate again all the support you give me here at Locked On Braves. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 money line bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. All right, this is Thursday. Typically, we do the mailbag on Friday, but did an episode earlier this week for the winter meetings, and plus I have plans on Friday, and plus I am starting to get under the weather. I can feel it coming on, so we're going to try to get this one in here on Thursday night, and unless there's some big news over the weekend, I probably won't talk to you again until Monday, and we are going to 3 episodes a week starting next week unless something breaks, but I'm expecting a lot of big news here in the coming weeks as free agency and the offseason really starts to pick up. I mean, it has to at some point, right? So certainly, if there's breaking news and everything, we'll continue to have more podcasts, but that's kind of the plans going forward and where we're at right now. But we are doing a mailbag episode, and we got like 20 questions to get to from social media. I'm going to try to get to some of your questions and comments of those here that are live as well, but I'm going to try to go and look at the ones from social media first and take precedent there. And the title of this one, talking about Orlando Arcia, this question comes from a couple of people. First one, Cavs Buckeyes, says, if it's the All-Star break and Arcia is back to hitting around his career norms, is there shortstop that might be available in trade? Could Grissom be ready if he's not dealt? So I think if that's the case, if it gets to a point, I think it would take a lot, honestly. I think Arcia would have to be pretty bad and pretty dreadful for this to happen by the All-Star break. But if that's the case, I think Vaughn Grissom gets a shot at the very least. And whoever maybe they bring in as that bench utility guy could get an opportunity as well. Willie Adames, if the Brewers don't trade him during the offseason, is certainly a name that could be available. I haven't really looked that far ahead in terms of trade prospects or players who could be traded by then. The Diamondbacks are one I've mentioned. Even now, if Jordan Lawler takes over that shortstop spot for the Diamondbacks, now they have Eugenio Suarez at third base. They have Ketel Marte at second. If Perdomo were to become available, I think that could be an interesting name to look at. Not necessarily, big time hitter, but could play solid defense at shortstop. So that's the two names that first popped in my head: Perdomo from the Diamondbacks and Willie Adames from the Brewers, if they're not traded this offseason. But I want to get to the point on Arcia. I think Arcia is who he is at this point. 3 of the past 4 seasons, he's had a WRC plus between 90 and 100. And the one year he didn't was 2021, where I think he played less than 40 games. So it wasn't a big sample size. And in that season, he was really crushing it in AAA to the point where the Braves tried him in the outfield to get his bat in the lineup. So I think he is who he is with the bat at this point. He's a slightly below average hitter who can bring some power, 15 to 20 home runs, and he's going to be slightly above average defensively. Somebody that doesn't have a lot of range, but is going to make the plays and has, a pretty strong arm. So I think Arcia is what he is for $2 million. You're not going to find much better value out there. Now, would I love to see them go out and find a big upgrade at shortstop? Yes, because I love the shortstop position, and I would love to see them kind of secure that up like they have the rest of the other position player spots right now. But I think Arcia is going to be just fine. I think he's going to handle that job. Hayes Bees also asked, curious what your thoughts are on the long-term plan at shortstop. Seems to be little chatter on that this offseason. And I think there's a reason for that. I think they're very comfortable with Orlando Arcia playing, league average or being a league average shortstop and paying him $2 million a year, letting him bat in the bottom third of your order, not expecting much from him. I think the Braves are certainly fine with that. As long as he makes the plays defensively, gives you a big home run every now and then, I don't think you should expect much more from him. And I just think he is who he is at this point. And there's not a clear long-term plan. And I've said this for a while. I don't see anybody in the system. If it's not Vaughn Grissom, I don't see anybody in this system that is going to be ready to take over the shortstop spot anytime soon. And it's why I've talked about it. And I talked about it coming into the season. My hope is still that we see them, go to the Orioles, who have a logjam at infield, and go to the Diamondbacks, go to a team, and it's a rarity. Not everybody just is stockpiling shortstops, young shortstops, but see if you can make a deal for a young shortstop prospect and groom them into that role if you have to. Trade. You got a lot of really good pitching prospects in your system. See if you can trade one of them for a shortstop prospect and groom them for that long-term role, because it's just not there right now. I mean, if I'm missing it, feel free to call me out in the comment section. Maybe Mario Baez, if he can stick at shortstop, but he's, again, years away. There's nobody that I see who is ready to take over the shortstop spot anytime soon. So I think it is Arcia's job for now. And I think, Vaughn Grissom, he gets the first opportunity if Arcia gets hurt or just kind of falls off a cliff, like you said. Some more questions here from Cavs Buckeyes. Are there any bats you have your eye on when international free agency starts in January? We need to get some more high upside position players back in the system. Agree with that 100%. The Rays are supposedly getting the third-ranked international prospect in the next signing period in Jose Perdomo out of Venezuela. Thank you, Ron Acuna Jr. I don't invest too much time in international prospects. It's nearly impossible to judge 16 and 17-year-old kids. You could probably go back and look at the international prospect rankings list from 4 or 5 years ago, and I highly doubt you're going to recognize too many names on that list. So I just don't spend too much time on that. Another one from Cavs Buckeyes. Do you believe when he says that Kelenic is the only position player they pursued this offseason? So this is a little bit of, play on words in my mind. Pursued and checked in on different things. Could he mean it's the only position player that they went after and made, trade offer for, or made a, free agent offer to? Yes, I think that's possible. I also think they've checked in on Ohtani. I think they've checked in on Bellinger. I think they've checked in on Teoscar Hernandez. I think they're checking in on everybody and seeing what the price is. But, using the word pursue, that kind of leaves a little bit of wiggle room. I could believe him that they haven't pursued any other position players, but they're certainly checking in on other position players, seeing what the price is. Otherwise, you never even find out about an opportunity with Kelenic. And then Large Lar asked, do you think Isaiah Kiner-Falefa would be a good signing as a utility player? Answered this one on social media, but wanted to answer it here as well. I thought about IKF as a solid utility backup player, but then it really makes you question the decision to offload Nicky Lopez, because I think he's better defensively and perhaps better with the bat as well, and you had him under contract for $4 million, IKF's probably going to cost you at least that. He may have the opportunity to go start somewhere on a lesser team. So I thought about IKF, but again, if you do that, it just doesn't make sense for moving off Nicky Lopez. All right, a lot more questions to get to on today's podcast, including the starting rotation and where the Braves go next. With that, we'll answer those questions here next. Get in on all the action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. It's $5. You win the bet, you get $150 in bonus bets. And right now, holiday season, could probably use that $150. You've been thinking about joining FanDuel. There's no better time to get in on the action than right now with spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. You want to get in on the early MLB action, look at the 2024 World Series favorites. Well, you'll see your Atlanta Braves there at the top, but you got NFL going on right now, NHL, college football bowl games are coming up in the college football playoff, and you got NBA going on as well. I think that in-season tournament thing's still happening. So there are other sports out there besides Major League Baseball that some people enjoy. And if you enjoy that, you can get in on the action at FanDuel. Go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Visit FanDuel.com/playsafe for tools and resources to help you stay in control of the way you play. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Jumping back into our questions here, still got a lot more to get to. Ballistic says, what's your opinion on the future of the Braves? Do you think we keep building for the future or go all out for the championship? Personally, I think we keep the core we have and just keep building pitching over the years. So interesting question here. I mean, kind of the cop-out answer is to say both. I'm going to go from a comment from the comment section from Truce Atlas. He says, I disagree with your take about the Braves going all in for this season. I think the smartest way to capture a title is to be in the playoffs more often. Once in a while, we all know it's a crapshoot. I agree with that 100%. And, Brian Snicker says it at the end of every season, we got a seat at the table. And that's what you want. And every now and then, things are going to go your way like it did in 2021, and you're going to win a World Series. I get that. I do. I also think, like I talked about in that episode where I said I think the Braves, now's the time to go all in. I think it's because you have that core locked up. You're making money like you've never made before with the battery and selling out, most of your games. I think now is the time, if you wanted to go all in on a big free agent, now would be the time to do it. But to answer your question, Alex Anthopoulos is always looking to win now and in the future, but it does feel like he is sometimes more future focused. So again, I think they'll probably start, they want to get to the playoffs every year. That is the goal. And like you said, it is a crapshoot, especially now with the expanded postseason and the new format. Look, you get there, you hope you're healthy and you're hot at the right time. Can you do things to put yourself in a better position to be ready that time of year? Sure. But again, I think just with the way that today's game is and the format is, you get there and you see what happens and you kind of hope for the best. All right, I don't want to say this next name. I don't know if it'll offend anybody, but their question is, a lot of the big starting pitching names associated with the Braves have been signed to other teams. At this point, who are the best realistic options for the Braves to go after? So I'm going to promote myself. I wrote an article on BravesToday.com where I listed all of the available pitching options left. I'll run through those really quickly. Frontline starters left: Shohei Ohtani, if you believe he's going to be healthy again in 2025. Yamamoto, sounds like his price is getting to a place where I doubt the Braves are comfortable. Blake Snell, the reigning NL Cy Young winner, who we've almost heard nothing about this offseason. He's probably not dependable enough for Alex Anthopoulos to give him a long-term deal. Jordan Montgomery seems like a good fit. I think he's more of a number 3 starter. I think there's a very good chance he's more of a number 3 starter going forward. and he's likely going to get $100+ million coming off a career year and a great postseason. I do think he's a solid fit, though. Soon to be 31 years old. Giving him a $100 million contract makes me a little nervous, but every free agent deal, especially with pitchers, is going to come with a lot of risk. You look at the trade market, Dylan Cease, if the reports are accurate, the trade cost for him is just way too high. Tyler Glasnow, how much are you really going to give up for 1 year, $25 million for somebody who's never thrown more than 130 innings? And then Corbin Burns, would be a great fit. Brewers may go with him into the season because I think you're going to get the same package at the trade deadline as you would now. Shane Bieber as well, but he comes with some injury concern. All pitchers do, but took a step backwards with those injuries last year as well. Could be somebody that maybe you get an extension with, but I don't love the idea of Shane Bieber. Those are the frontline guys left. And again, I think most likely in those would be either Bieber or Jordan Montgomery. And then there's still several mid-rotation starters left. Imanaga coming over from Japan, 30-year-old. Braves don't typically, aren't involved heavily in the Japanese players. And then you got, Lucas Giolito, Marcus Stroman, Seth Lugo, Jack Flaherty, Michael Wacha, Mike Clevenger. It's a whole group of just mid-rotation guys there that I think are all the same that you can probably get on short deals. So there's still a lot of names still left out there. I know everybody kind of freaks out every time a starting pitcher comes off the market, but there's still a lot of names out there. Jackson Baswell, what do you think about shortening the time players can sign so we have more action quicker and so they will have time to get equipped with their teams? Again, I don't follow other sports closely. I know NFL, I believe, has like a shortened window where free agency opens. NBA might be the same. I like the MLB offseason. I like the surprise of, I kind of talked about this yesterday. I like the surprise of you hearing, this so-and-so team's in on this free agent. It's down to 2 teams and maybe a mystery team. It's, and then you get the final offer. You get who the final team is. And I like that part of the offseason. I like the surprise element to it because, again, you hear that first rumor and then you're just constantly updating, your social media feed all day, seeing what's the next step. Well, when's the next announcement going to break? I think that's fun part of the offseason. Now, would it be great? And could they say, start the winter meetings at the beginning of December, have a 2-week window, that way you have some time between the end of the season and when the winter meetings start, where you can kind of have these conversations, work on things. And then, boom, whenever the winter meeting starts, now you can sign players. And then for the next 2 weeks or so leading up to the week before Christmas, that's kind of your free agency window. I think that could be fun. But I do like the surprise nature of the offseason of never knowing when a move is just going to drop on you like that. Braves 2021 World Series champs, both Ian Anderson and Huascar Noah were kept in the major 40-man pruning. Do you think the Braves believe they will come back to form soon? How do they compare to the group of guys like Dodd and Vine? So, yeah, I mean, those guys are expected to come back this year. I think if they weren't expected to come back, until 2025, like a Kyle Wright, I wouldn't be surprised if those guys either got traded or non-tendered. But because you can see, the light at the end of the tunnel with both of those guys, I think that's why they were kept. For Noah, I've always seen him as a bullpen guy, maybe a multi-inning reliever. And I think that's how the Braves probably at least used him to start the season. Ian Anderson was losing his rotation spot before the injury happened. So I think there's still questions about both of those guys. I put them in the same boat as a Dodd, as a Vines right now, the back of the rotation options. But, Ian Anderson certainly do have some more upside that come with them. Williams Brave says, has AA moved on from Cease? And do we get a starter or go with elder AJ Smith-Shawver? So I think he has moved on from Cease right now until the price comes down. And I do think we get at least one more pitcher, whether that's a frontline starter or a middle rotation starter. I do think the Braves get at least one more solid starting pitcher this offseason. I'd be a little surprised if they don't. Argenis says, if you could sign any Braves prospect to a Chirinos type of deal, who would it be? Hurston Waldrop would be the one for me, especially if he comes into spring training. He looks more polished. The command looks better. He grabs a rotation spot and kind of goes with it. I could see them locking him up kind of like they did Spencer Strider. but he'd be the one guy right now that I think if I were going to give anybody a Jackson Chourio, I think I said the wrong name a minute ago, but Jackson Chourio, if there was anybody I was going to give a Jackson Chourio type deal right now, it'd be Hurston Waldrop in my mind. Carter Smith, both oiled up and in Speedos. Who's winning a twerk off, Brian Snitker or Brandon Gaudin? I don't necessarily know what that is. I hope I'm not saying anything inappropriate, but I'm going to go with Brian Snitker. You saw the slide from Brandon Gaudin into second base. The guy has no athletic ability in him, so I'm going to go with Snitker. Lovable Sports, which former player would you like to fill the coaching vacancies? Move Weiss to first, Chipper at third, Markakis at bench coach, Moylan in the bullpen. Weiss to either first or third base makes the most sense to me there. I don't see Chipper on the field. He might be waiting for that hitting coach spot to open up, down the road, maybe when his kids are a little older. I could see him getting into a coaching role that way. Markakis to me is more by a lead by example guy, but I don't know. He could be a good coach. I know he's a great clubhouse guy. And then I think Moylan's where he needs to be. He's entertaining, on TV, whether it's doing post game. I honestly like him doing either TV or radio. I think he does a great job. So I think Moylan's where he needs to be. Cavs Buckeyes, if the offseason ends with Kelnick and a Seth Lugo type of starter, so we'll say they get Jared Kelnick, they get a mid-rotation starter, and those are the two big additions, is that a failure in your mind? No. I think the questions coming into the offseason were left field and starting pitching. And like it or not, Braves don't need a frontline starter. Again, I've said this several times. They have Spencer Strider and Max Fried at the top of the rotations. Those are top 15 pitchers in all of baseball. You don't have to get a frontline starter. So if you at the very least get a mid-rotation starter and you at least think you've solved left field long-term, whether it's Kelnick or maybe with Vaughn Grissom as well, and plus the additions they've made in the bullpen, that would still be I don't know if I'd call it a win of an off-season, but I wouldn't call it a failure either. All right, we got a lot more questions I want to get to, some more about the rotation as well, some about AJ Smith-Shawver, how he breaks through in 2024. We'll discuss all of those here next. Want to remind you once again, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. All right, getting back into our questions here. Brendan says, do you think MLB should let teams trade future draft picks like they can in the NBA? I feel like it would help teams in win now mode who have a weak farm make trades. You can trade picks now. I believe it's comp picks that you can trade at the moment. Braves traded for a pick from the Royals a couple of years ago in the Drew Waters move. So there are certain picks that you can trade. I personally think it complicates things a little bit too much, but I don't see why not. Like if teams want to, you certainly can. You also got to keep in mind the way that the bonus pool money works in the draft. It's very important that you not only have draft picks, you have high draft picks. So to give that up, could be a huge detriment to a team. But if a team wants to do that in order to try to win now, I think they should have that option. So I'm not completely against the idea, but I'd hate to have to keep up with all that and whose pick belongs to who, which picks are being traded. Hayden Harris, what's the higher likelihood? AJ Smith-Shawver pitches over 100 innings for the Braves in 2024, or he's pitching in a different organization? So I don't think either of those happen. But I think it's more likely he throws over 100 innings for the Braves than him being on a different organization. Again, for me to trade either AJ Smith-Shawver or Hurston Waldrop, I have to be getting a pitcher in return that I can lock up long-term. Otherwise, AJ Smith-Shawver could be that guy in a year or two. So I think AJ Smith-Shawver stays here. I don't think he throws over 100 innings, but I think that's more likely than him being in a different organization. Bellfire, it doesn't seem like acquiring a top-end starter will happen this offseason. Do you think that more because of the price or lack of farm system depth, or AA feeling confident in our organizational starter depth? This is personal opinion. I think AA is just super scared of making a long-term commitment to a pitcher. Just personal opinion. don't know the guy. I think he is terrified of giving out a long-term deal to any free agent, especially one in their 30s, and especially a starting pitcher. I think it terrifies him. So I think that more than anything, just that type of deal being so risky and him not wanting to have any dead contracts. And he doesn't, to his credit, well, other than the Evan White contract that he just took on, you look at this Braves roster, there's not a dead contract on this team right now. You could have said Marcell Ozuna was coming into last year. That's no longer the case. I mentioned the Evan White one they just acquired. Alex Anthopoulos is very good about making sure they don't have dead money on this team. And I think that's maybe the biggest reason more than anything why we're probably not going to see him get a frontline starter, at least not in the free agent market. Bellfire, who do you think is a big breakout candidate for the Braves in 24? I know it's hard to call a Rookie of the Year winner a breakout guy, but I think Michael Harris is going to take a big step offensively this season and put himself in perennial all-star category. So that'd be the one name. I mean, who hasn't broken out already on this Braves team, including Michael Harris? I think he's going to get that 2020 season that he's just missed the past couple of years, his first 2 years in the big leagues, maybe even has the potential for a 2030 season. Kind of tough too, where he bats in the lineup and he's overshadowed by a lot of Braves guys. But, I think if anybody, he has the potential to come out and, like you said, be an all-star caliber player. Maybe Sean Murphy, if he puts a whole season together. I mean, he was the consensus best catcher in all of baseball the first half of last year before just falling off in the second half. If he can just put together a full, more consistent season, maybe he kind of breaks out as that top catcher in all of baseball. I can't think of anybody on the pitching side unless Hurston Waldrop just comes in, shows that command that he has fixed that, and he comes in and grabs a rotation spot for most of the season, then maybe him. But, I mean, this Braves team's good, and they've all proven they're good. There's really not anybody on here left to break out. Owen Ray, I'm all in on Clevenger being back at the top of the rotation arm after watching many of his starts last year. I'd love to see him slot in as a 3-4 for us if a trade for a big arm doesn't materialize. What are your thoughts? So Clevenger's one I mentioned in that article. I think he would be a solid middle rotation arm, especially somebody you could probably get on a short-term 2-year deal. So I wouldn't hate it. I don't know that he has top of the rotation stuff left in him anymore, but again, depending on the price, I think he could be a solid middle rotation starter there. Dad says, I know we might not necessarily want it, but do you see the Braves kicking the tires on Flaherty or Giolito because of their Max Fried connection, maybe trying to sweeten the pot for him to accept a more team-friendly contract? So I think it's possible. I think what's possible here is that either one of those guys, maybe more so Lucas Giolito, takes a 1-year deal at maybe a higher AAV, maybe like a 15 to 18 million type, may have to be 20 million. I could see one of them maybe taking a 1-year deal like that, coming to play with a friend in Max Fried, coming to play for a good team, resetting their market, and then going back out there next year. I could see that with either one of those guys happening for sure, because I think the most they're going to get is a 2-year deal for 40 million. So do you bet on yourself to go to a good team and what you think could be a good situation on 1 year, like I said, 15 to 20 million, kind of reset your market and then try it again next year so you can get a 3-4 year deal out of it? I could see one of them potentially doing that. And like you said, having that 1 year at least to play with Max Fried. Final question here from social media. Dustin Mounts, your prediction of what Ohtani's contract will be in dollars and years. See how close you get since he's rumored to be signing any day now. Also, off your article, who are your top 2 pitchers for the Braves from the second tier if the Braves settle for a mid-rotation guy? I like either Flaherty or Giolito, again, especially if you get one of them on a 1-year deal. And then I like Michael Wacha too. So Giolito, Wacha, I think those would be 2 guys I'd be really interested in. As far as what Ohtani's going to get, I think he's going to get a 10-year deal. I'll say $450 million, but I think he's going to get an opt-out after the 3rd year. I think he's going to want to go with a deal for the team that gives him some sort of opt-out for hopefully whenever he gets back on the mound and pitching at a Cy Young level, he can opt out and maybe get another $400 million. So I'll say 10 years, $450 million. That seems light. He may get over $500 million. It's just hard for me to see a team willing to do that for a guy who he's already had 2 major elbow issues. And if he can't pitch, yeah, he's an MVP DH, but he is a DH only player that you're giving $400-500 million to. So we'll see. It's going to be highly interesting to see what he does get. A couple of news items from Thursday. The Braves brought back Angel Perdomo on a split contract. He's going to miss all of 2024 after having Tommy John surgery. Braves will still have 4 years of control over him. He will take up a 40-man spot during the offseason, but he'll go to the 60-day injured list when the season begins, opening up a spot there, similar to what they did with Tyler Matzik last year. Big arm, 37% strikeout rate last year, so it could be a big piece of the bullpen in the future. They also outrighted Evan White to the minors. He's unlikely to get claimed because of his contract, could accept free agency, but then he forfeits the deal that he has, so not going to do that, but it does open up a 40-man spot. And the Reds signed Yeimer Candelario to a 3-year, $45 million deal, which makes me wonder, are some of their infielders available? Sorry, a couple of questions from social media that I did miss. JJ says, what do you think about Troy Snitker being brought back on the coaching staff? Find it a little odd. There was manager talk around him at the beginning of the offseason and haven't heard anything since. Interesting for sure. They are in the middle of hiring him. Obviously, Troy Snitker being Brian Snitker's son would be an interesting fit. And JJ also said, would you trade Shawver, Kelnick, Grissom, and J.R. Ritchie for Glasnow and a Rosarena? So I honestly, at this point, I don't think I would. I love J.R. Ritchie. I know he's having Tommy John surgery, but I think he has potential, top of the rotation stuff. Obviously, Shawver has top of the rotation stuff. Grissom, I like as a solid utility player who should be getting every day at bats. And I'm optimistic about Kelnick. So I don't know that I do that trade, honestly. All right, a lot of questions from social media. I know I didn't get to all of you or really any of you in the comment section who are here with me live. Almost 200 people live. Thank you so much for the support. If I didn't get to your questions, let me write those down in the comment section below on YouTube. I'll try to get to those there. But thank you so much to all those who submitted questions on social media. I really do appreciate it. Scott Knight says, Jake, you need to cut Brandon Gaudin a break. He is nearly as old as me. When I was young, I could slide the best of them. Now I'm 62. I'm pretty sure I would look very bad. Good point. I probably would not look the same myself either. So appreciate all the comments. Thank you so much for joining us here at Locked On Braves. Thank you so much for all the support that you give us here. Make sure that you subscribe on YouTube. Hit that thumbs up button. Make sure wherever you get your podcast that you subscribe as well. Give me a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify. Really helps grow the podcast. So I appreciate all your support that you give me here. But that will do it for this episode. Make sure you follow us on social media at Shortstop Ball and at LockedOn_Braves. And we will talk to you next time.